Eric Mandel is with me in the studio, and that's interesting, isn't it? Because that demographic, the evangelical Christians, solid supporters of Israel traditionally, but they also back Republicans traditionally, and President Trump, who, it has to be said, is way ahead in the polls right now, less than a year out from the election. How do you read all of that?
If the president is not indicted or in jail or can run in every state, he probably will be the Republican nominee. And many Israelis remember that President Trump is the person who certified the Golan annexation, the move of the embassy, Jerusalem as as the capital of Israel.
Recognizing Golan.
Yeah, recognizing Golan. That it's, and so there's a lot of positive there. But for the pro-Israel community, they also have to be tempered in the sense of President Trump is a transactional president if he gets back there. He's a little impulsive, and he's a little more isolationist. And some of the actions he did in the Middle East were not good for Israel or for America in the Middle East, when he did not respond to the Iranian attack on the Saudi oil facilities, when he abandoned the Syrian Kurds. So there's a little mixed record, but specifically on Israel, it's strong, but it's no guarantee that it will remain that way. I think Americans are more concerned about President Biden not lasting through a second term, and having a President Harris who may not be as President Biden, the last Democratic president who will call themselves a Zionist. That's we should give him some tremendous credit for that. But what goes on and the pressure that's going on, Jewish Americans, including many liberal Zionists, who found out that their friends, the progressives, I've heard this so many times, are anti-Semites. They're torn of where to vote, because what used to be for most Americans that Israel was not a primary concern, for many Americans it has become a primary concern. And then if that is, that may change your political affiliation, how you vote. And
in terms of support for Israel, there is something of a demographic time bomb in the United States, isn't there? We saw in that recent poll that the overwhelming majority of young Americans support the Palestinians. Many support Hamas. Some even believe that Israel should be handed over to Hamas. That's the way to end the conflict here.
Right. So it also depends how things are phrased. But the one that scared me the most, they asked them, Jews as a class, this was the Harvard-Harris poll. So it wasn't about Israel. Jews as a class, are they oppressors? 64% said Jews are oppressors. So you can understand what goes on on campuses. I've spoken at 10 universities, including Ivy League universities, and from north to south in the last 2 months.
And was this a poll of college-educated young people?
This was Gen Z. It did not break it down. But listen, they learn their information in 30 seconds on TikTok, and they think they're a Middle East expert. And what they learn very often is it's very simple. There's a victim and a victimizer, an oppressed and oppressor, and they look at Israel as an oppressor. And so it's easy for them to hear the case that Israel is made as an apartheid state or a colonialist, and facts don't matter. And so it is. I actually have a piece coming out in the Jerusalem Post about this Monday. Everybody take a look.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the solution to that, Eric? What do you do about that moving forward? I guess one aspect of this is that it's emerged that Qatar is the #1 foreign donor to American universities, presumably not out of their love of education and the fine arts and humanities and so forth, but because they are getting something out of it.
So, according to Barry Weiss, and a liberal Zionist, she says there's over $13 billion in dark money. She quoted a survey and they do good research on to make sure it's solid, that is going in. And when you do statistics of multiple, if you will, pro-Israel organizations, you find universities that receive the funding, that have Students for Justice in Palestine, that have BDS, have much more anti-Semitism. And this didn't all start on October 7th. Groups like Stand With Us have been fighting this for over 20 years. The anti-Semitism on campuses, anti-Zionism, is not a new phenomenon, but all of a sudden many liberal American Jews, I work with a group of Ivy League parents who went to speak to one of the presidents and were appalled at the responses beyond what you saw. Personally, they got their responses, and there needs to be in America that Jewish students are protected by what's civil rights called Title VI. So they cannot be abused like any other minority. And then there should be a hammer, state and federal funding. If you can protect Jewish students, then you can remove funding. And freedom of speech. Right now, everybody, this is all freedom of speech. But when people who are pro-Israel spoke on American campuses, they were shut down, and people said that was their freedom of speech to shut it down. The hypocrisy is a lot, and big funders have to also not just threaten to stop money to universities, stop it to change the dynamic. There's much more than that, because the faculty's also been indoctrinating its students. They've become advocates, not educators anymore.
Well, do you see things changing? I mean, we saw this outcry over the college professors, one of whom had to resign over her comments before that congressional committee. In terms of public opinion, though, do you see a change at all in attitudes when we've seen these very quite intimidating anti-Israel protests in major cities?
They're still going on. I've spoken directly to students who feel that they've been abandoned, and these things, there really needs to be much more done. So you may see some small things where a professor will be kicked out or suspended temporarily, like Students for Justice in Palestine has been temporarily suspended from Columbia. They need to be permanently suspended, because if they said those things about any other ethnic group, race group, whatever how you want to define Jews, which is way beyond that.
Minority.
Any minority, it would never be tolerated. So we need to get away from the double standards, and people have to be resolute to go back and fight this week in, month in, year in, and year out.
Well, fascinating to talk to you, Eric. Thank you very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Eric Mandel there, and do read his piece coming out soon. Thank you very much. We're going to